G'day everyone and welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. If you haven't been here before, well, my name is Mark. I'm a retired Kiwi bloke. I'm a huge rugby fan and I live here in beautiful Mexico. Now in today's episode I'm going to be talking about the player ratings across the first weekend of this year's Autumn International Series. Going to have a look at position by position and share with you those players that stood out for me and who I thought had a great game in this first weekend of the Autumn International Series. So let's get into it straight away. Okay, out of the two games that were played this weekend, when I look at the fullback position, there's one player that stand out for me from this weekend's games, and that was Will Jordan. Yes, I think he was the best fullback on the field this weekend. Scored that great try, of course, for the All Blacks, was ably assisted by Beauden Barrett in that particular movement, but he looked dangerous from the back, Will Jordan. And compared to the other fullbacks that played this weekend, I thought he had a pretty good game for the All Blacks. So he gets my #1 rating for the fullback position for this weekend. Okay, moving on to the wings now. And for me, there were three players that stood out over the weekend on the wing position. The first one was Darcy Graham for Scotland. He was fantastic. He scored 4 tries for Scotland in that game. They were all very, very good tries. He's getting back to his best, Darcy Graham. And I love the way he plays. He's a little guy. He's got a good foot in terms of foot speed and directional change. And he's always hungry looking for the ball. So Darcy Graham is in there for me for this weekend. Mark Talia scored 2 tries for the All Blacks, of course, was decisive in his running for once this weekend, which caught my eye. Instead of doing those snaking, looping runs back into the forwards, he stayed in his outside channel, and as a result of that, he showed us what he can really do when he gets ably supported from inside. And both of those tries were not set up by his inside centres, so that's something to consider as well. But Mark Talia had a good game for the All Blacks. And then the last one for me was Emmanuel Faye-Waboso. He played brilliantly for England, even though they lost that game. Each time he got the ball, I thought he looked very dangerous. This guy can be a game changer on the wing, and really liked the way that he played for England in the weekend. So there you go, there's my wing selections for this weekend. Now moving on to the centres and number 13 jersey. Well, this one this weekend was owned for me by Hugh Jones for Scotland. I thought he had an outstanding game. He played very well, connecting his outside wingers into the game. He also was very elusive when he got the ball. He made a couple of good breaks in that game. And compared to the other number 13s that were running around this weekend, I thought Hugh Jones was the best by far. So he gets my vote for most outstanding centre for this weekend. On to the number 12, and who did I see stand out this weekend? Well, 2 players for 2 different reasons. The first one was Tui Pelotu for Scotland. He played really, really well, and it was what he was doing with the ball that made him get my attention. He was doing a lot of good stuff with very soft hands, putting his outside players into gaps and running the defensive line very, very well at all as well. So it's not only just about busting runs. He did a couple of those in this game as well. But for me, Tui Pelotu just showed what he's really creating with that Scottish backline. And without Finn Russell there this weekend, he was really, really playing a fantastic game. And then the other one that stood out for me in the number 12 jersey this weekend was Ollie Lawrence for England. Again, on a losing side, but in this case, Lawrence was really big on defence. He saved a couple of tries that the All Blacks didn't get through really good tackling and good defensive coverage. So Ollie Lawrence was a standout in the number 12 jersey for me this weekend. Okay, moving on to the number 10 jersey for this past weekend, and the 2 players that stood out for me, well, the first one was Marcus Smith for England. I thought he played exceptionally well while he's on the field. A lot of chatter online about why he was taken off. I'll let all you to decide that one. But for me, while he was there, his kicking at goal was very good. He had a couple of really lousy drop goal attempts, but those were done under penalty advantages. But the way that he moved the ball around the back line for England and got England away was very, very impressive. And I think Marcus Smith has improved his level of play at international level, and that can only be a good thing for England. So a good game by Marcus Smith by my accounts. And the other player that really stood out this weekend was Adam Hastings playing for Scotland. Yes, he came in to replace Finn Russell, who wasn't available through selection this weekend. And I thought Adam Hastings had a fantastic game for Scotland. He ended up scoring 17 points by himself in that game. He was brilliant in getting the Scottish backline away. His kicking was very good. He did a couple of really smart, creative kicks as well. One from a penalty that put Darcy Graham away for a try. and another one was a crossfield kick that also helped get a try for Scotland. So he was really on his game. He even did a bit of razzle dazzle with a behind the back pass that led to Duhan van der Merwe getting a great try for Scotland. So I was really impressed with Adam Hastings' performance. So those are the two number 10s that stood out for me this weekend. On to the number 9s. This was a little bit more difficult to pick for me because there wasn't a number 9 this weekend that really stood out and had a really fantastic game. So I'm going to put Ben Spencer and Cortez Ratama down here. They both played reasonably well for their respective teams, and they didn't make too many mistakes. Although Ratama gave away an intercept try, he did some other good things in defence for the All Blacks, particularly getting some steals back. Spencer was solid without being brilliant, but again, compared to the other halves that played in the other game this weekend, we had Lamani going off with a yellow card, so I can't really give him a very good vote, and also Ali Price wasn't very fantastic for Scotland either. So for me, Spencer and Ratama were the standout halves this weekend without being absolutely brilliant, but they get my vote on this occasion. Now let's get into the forwards, and starting off with the number 8s. Who stood out for me this weekend? Well, there was two of them. Jack Dempsey had a great game for Scotland until he was replaced in the second half. He was into everything, and if Scotland are going to have any chance against South Africa next weekend, Jack Dempsey's going to have a very good game for them. And then the other one was Ben Earl for England. I thought he was very impressive in the loose stuff for England this weekend. Again, despite them being on a losing team, I thought he was shining very bright, getting very, very busy around the breakdown, getting the ball out quickly, and thought Ben Earl had a great game for England. So there you go, there's my two picks for this weekend in the number 8 position. Moving on to the number 7 jersey, and there was only really one that stood out for me this weekend. Tom Curry for England. I thought he had a really, really good game. Again, like the back three for England, I thought they played exceptionally well in this game, and Tom Curry was in there doing his share of the work with the loosies for England, so he gets my vote over and above everybody else that played in the number 7 jersey this weekend. Moving on to the number 6 jersey, and these two players I think were probably putting their hand up for players of the weekend in my opinion. For England, it was Chandler Cunningham. South was absolutely fantastic in the white jersey for them. Some couple of big hits that really got him noticed in the game, but also did some good runs in general play. And on the All Black side, Wallace Satiti had another blinder for the All Blacks. He's just bringing it every single game that he plays, Wallace Satiti. So they were the two standout number 6 on the field. Okay, looking at the number 5 jersey this weekend, two players stood out for me. Scott Cummings for Scotland and George Martin for England. Cummings was able to secure a lot of good ball from set piece for Scotland and help them keep up the possession percentage that they had to be able to have that comfortable win over Fiji in the end. So he did a really good job. George Martin I thought was good in the tight for England. He also was good in the set piece. The scrums were a bit of a battle in this game, and I think George Martin definitely played his role. He did some good line out takes for England. So out of the locks that played in the number 5 jersey this weekend, I give my picks to Scott Cummings and also to George Martin. Now moving on to the number 4 jersey, and two players stood out for me again here in the 4 jersey, and one was Maro Itoje for England and the other Adam Gilchrist for Scotland. Itoje had a great game across the field in tight play as well as in general running. He had that big run, of course, down the left hand side of the field. Unfortunately went into touch, and that could have led to something really interesting for England. But Itoje again seems to really lift his standard against the All Blacks. He's going to be a big player for England against South Africa this year in their autumn game. So watch out for how Itoje goes. And Gilchrist did some really good things for Scotland in that game. Again, securing a lot of good ball, but was good in breakdown play, getting the ball back for Scotland in second phases. And again, he'll be another important part of the Scottish team to play against South Africa next weekend. Okay, now we move into the front row, and starting off with number 3, and for me Tyrell Lomax was one of the best on the field this weekend in the number 3 position. Helped in that All Black scrum to be a little bit more secure when things went a little bit south, but finished off with a really good game, I thought, Tyrell Lomax, and deserved his starting position in this All Black jersey. On the other side, I thought Xander Fagerson had a really good game for Scotland. He was big in general play. He did a lot of good carries. He was good in the line out, short line out for Scotland as well. and I was impressed with Xander Fagerson this weekend for Scotland. Now, there was only one hooker on my list this weekend for a standout player, and his name was Tavita Kanaveri for Fiji. He had an absolute blinder in a team that got absolutely thrashed by Scotland in the end. But Kanaveri was the captain of Fiji this weekend, and he really stood up as a leader. He scored a fantastic try from a line-out where he threw the ball into the line-out. It came back to him on the wing. He did a bit of a dummy pass and caught Darcy Graham out and went over for a great Fiji try. So for the number 2 in the Fiji jersey this weekend, he stood out for me above the others that played. Okay, looking at the number 1 jersey this weekend, 2 players caught my eye in terms of their performances. First of all, the Fijian Harete Hitit. He played very, very well again in a losing team. He was good in open play, got some very good carries, and never gave up for the Fijians throughout this game. Showed a lot of heart, even though he was on a side that was getting absolutely crushed by Scotland. And then on the other number 1 that I picked this weekend, I think Pierre Schumann had a great game for Scotland. He was busy in a lot of things for Scotland, very good in the scrummaging as well, and had a good game with a couple of good carries in open play. So from a number 1 perspective, Pierre Schumann gets my vote. Okay, so how did the bench players go this weekend? Well, I've given them a bit of a rating as well and looked across the 2 games to see who really stood out for me coming off the bench. And if we have a look at the forwards first of all, that came into the game that really I thought made a difference. We've got to look at Scotland's Sutherland. I thought he played really well, Rory Sutherland. When he came on for Scotland, he was very busy, and it was at the time of the game where Fiji had been on top. Scotland were getting a little bit back into the game, and he was one of the instrumental players I felt that really gave Scotland the emphasis in the last 20 minutes of that game. So it was a very, very good performance by Rory Sutherland. The other player that came on that I thought made a big difference in a game was Ben Curry for England. I thought he had a great couple of tackles when he came on, and he also did a very good steal when the All Blacks were on attacking, looking dangerous to score another try, and he was a standout for me. And the next player that came on off the bench from the forwards that made a real impact as far as I was concerned was Patrick Tuipulotu for the All Blacks. Within 5 minutes of coming on, he had 3 really good runs. And yes, okay, he knocked the ball on after George Ford's penalty attempt at the end of the game, but it didn't end up costing the All Blacks the game. And I think his contribution up until then was really, really good. Just got to get the line-out calling and communication a little bit clearer with Asafa Amur. But I think Patrick Tuipulotu really showed what he can do in terms of impact coming in off the bench for this All Black team. Okay, looking at the bench backs that came on that made an impact, and I've got 3 that stood out for me on this list. The first one was Damien McKenzie for the All Blacks. I thought he had a good game when he came on, and as I've been saying, I think using Damien McKenzie as an impact player, it takes the pressure off him from running the game, but he can come on and he can use his talents and skills to really have an impact, as he did for the All Blacks in that game against England and setting up that try for Mark Talia in the closing minutes of the game. That was very, very well done. I thought Cam Roigard had a good game when he came off the bench as well. Again, just giving a little bit more emphasis to the All Blacks, and that's what they've been looking for coming off the bench. So I think Roigard played that role very well. And then the third player who came on the bench that made a big impact over the weekend, I thought, in the back line, was Tom Jordan for Scotland. The Kiwi-born Jordan has just qualified for residency in Scotland, and Gregor Townsend didn't hesitate to put him on the field against Fiji and give him a test of international rugby this weekend, and he did very, very well indeed, and he definitely had a good impact on the Scottish team in the last 20 minutes of that game against Fiji. He was in there being very busy. He was a good connection in the back line as well. He helped set up a couple of tries for Scotland late in the game, and that's exactly what you want from a bench player. So he was a standout for me over the weekend. So there you go, there's some of the players that stood out for me over the weekend in the respective positions. I'm sure you've got a different opinion, so why don't you let me know in the comments, and let me know also if you do actually agree with me on a couple of these players as well. If you didn't watch both of the games, it's okay, just put your list down for the ones that you did watch in the respective games. So there you go, there's my player ratings for this weekend, the first weekend of the Autumn International Series. Now we're building up to week 2 where some of the other teams come into play, and this is going to be all very exciting. You can follow the whole competition here on Inside Rugby with Mark. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, give this video a like and a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it. Also share it with your rugby mates and tell them that there's this crazy Kiwi guy who's making videos in Mexico about rugby, and I'll be very, very grateful to you for doing that. I'll be back again soon with another episode from Inside Rugby with Mark. Until then, stay safe, stay well everyone. Keep enjoying rugby across the world, and I'll see you again very soon here on the show. Until next time, it's bye for now.